Welcome back to the Tara Palmeri Show. About a year ago, the White House was rife with turmoil dealing with the fallout around Jeffrey Epstein. Sure, if you ask them, everything's fine. But of course, my sources told me there was no omerta around it. The only place that they were really talking about this was in the Situation Room, a place reserved for, carrying out major raids like killing Osama bin Laden. And here they are, Trump's inner circle, without Trump, talking about how to contain the fallout from all the allegations about the president in the Epstein files. And he said, it's a hoax, bury it, cover it up. So there's everybody wondering, how do we do it, right? That's Todd Blanche saying, maybe we give Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon. J.D. Vance saying, let's get her on the record with Tucker Carlson. We've got to release all of this. I'm worried about my political future. He doesn't say that, but it's very clear that's what he's doing. Dan Bongino, basically, he calling it Trump's Iran-Contra and saying he's going to quit over it. Kash Patel blaming Pam Bondi. And the thing is, in the reporting in the New York Times from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan that comes out in their new book, Regime Change, they have people on the record, quotes. How did they get that kind of reporting? How are they able to actually know word for word what top officials said in these top secret meetings? Someone in there scribbling furiously away, or even worse, someone that wasn't in the room over the phone recording. Well, my guest, Michael Popok, he seems to think so. So we're going to talk about all that and more. I explained too how it works in Washington, how all of these operatives and how all of these top officials, they want to make sure that history is written so that they look like the American heroes, right? But we talk about how they were able to do this insider reporting. Perhaps someone was recording. We don't actually know for sure, but take a listen to the show. I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating. Before you do that, please hit the subscribe button. It's a way to support my independent journalism. Go to tarapalmeri.com and sign up for my newsletter, The Red Letter. That's another way to do it. It's a great way to support this kind of reporting. As you know, I was a former White House correspondent, so I know a lot about how these situations work out, but the fallout from the Epstein files is something unlike anything I've ever covered. So take a listen here. The latest reporting from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan of the New York Times. It's an excerpt from their book, Regime Change Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump. And it's all about the summer of Epstein. Remember that period of time when the White House was telling us, no big deal. We don't care about Epstein at all. It's a hoax, Democratic witch hunt, nothing real. Well, no, they were having a freak out in the Situation Room regularly, the place reserved for raids, against Osama bin Laden, the one that took them out. This is where the brain trust of an administration goes to deal with crisis. And that is where Trump's top officials from DOJ, Todd Blanche, his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, Kash Patel, FBI, J.D. Vance, the vice president, top aides, are all going there trying to figure out, how do we contain the fallout around Jeffrey Epstein? So, Michael, thanks so much for coming on the show to talk about all of this.
Absolutely. It's what we suspected. We had in our world of reporting and commentary, we had the big pieces of the puzzle, but this ties the puzzle all together and fills in some of the gaps. We knew that there was meetings at the White House, at the Department of Justice, and the FBI attended, because reporters on the ground saw traffic going between these various buildings in or around the time these Epstein decisions needed to be made. The timeline that she lays out in the Freakout, Maggie Haberman and her colleague, is right. It explains for us exactly what we were observing. First of all, let's talk about who was not in the Situation Room before we get to the list of people that were in there. Donald Trump was not in the Situation Room. These were all his coterie, his advisors, his enablers, who all got together. He was left outside the door. That's one. Two people were not in the room, but phoned in, which I think is important to the reporting, because when Maggie and her colleague do the reporting, it looks like somebody is taking either copious notes or is recording the conversations, because she is not shy. This isn't like paraphrases or in the third person. This is like, this person, Stephen Chung, said this about the pardon of Ghislaine Maxwell. We can't pardon a child sex trafficker because it'll be a PR nightmare. That is not a paraphrase. That is a quote. Now, the two people who were not in the room besides Donald Trump, but were on the phone And Lord knows who was on the phone with them is Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. Okay.
Who were at war with each other at the time, by
Right.
the way,
Right.
who would be taking copious notes because they knew that they were already leaks happening. Like immediately after Pam Bondi came out and said case closed, I believe it was July 7th. There was a leak afterwards that Dan Bongino, was furious at her. This is the podcast host, Deputy FBI, Deputy FBI. And it's like, he was just thinking about his return to podcasting, his $1 million podcast deals, and how he had made an entire, audience based on the Epstein scandal and how this would hurt his credibility. The fact that they would.
You're right on the note. You're right on the note. So that's why you and I, that's why I like doing your show, because you've got two people who are on thin ice, and Lord knows who's on the phone with Kash Patel. And if it's Bongino, as you said, taking notes or recording it then
for future podcast.
Well, I don't know what they're recording, but Maggie and her colleague got a hold of it, because this isn't, and they don't publish this in the New York Times. After it goes through, as you and I know, but we'll tell our audiences, after it goes through a vigorous examination by the media lawyers, First Amendment lawyers,
standards
inside and outside the New York Times for vetting before this thing gets published. She's got a transcript. There was a bug and a mole, and this is going to drive Donald Trump crazy. There's now going to be a mole hunt over who cooperated with Maggie Haberman. How did she get this data, this information? So that's the first thing. The first thing is somebody was taking great notes or recording it. I don't think it was the people in the room. My two guesses are yours, Bondi and or Kash
Well, it's
Patel.
a SCIF, right? Isn't the Situation Room a SCIF? So you can't even bring a recording device into it.
They have to bring in, when they have articles, like when the Wall Street, she reports on it, when the Wall Street Journal broke about the birthday book, the birthday album, they had to bring in hard copies of the Wall Street Journal. They couldn't even bring it up on their phones because there are no phones. There's no digital.
Exactly. It's a SCIF. Right. I mean, let me get the exact definition of a SCIF.
Yeah, it's a secret compartmented, right.
Yeah. Well, now I'm getting the definition of a small light boat for rowing.
It's a secret compartmentalized information facility, something like that.
Sensitive compartmented information facility. You're totally right.
It's like that.
Okay.
We all learned that during the Mar-a-Lago raid. So the other person, but the reason I mentioned that the person not in the room is Donald Trump, because the way she frames this is that Trump does not want to release the documents. And he's made that clear to his enablers. I don't want to release them. Wants to bury them.
Yes.
He believes, and Susie Wiles probably does too, that this is a fringe conspiracy theory that's being promulgated and being promoted by liberal media or independent media. It's just the Taras of the world and Bens of the world, Legal AF, and it's not getting any traction with voters. So they don't care. They want it to go away. But JD Vance is sweating, and because he's part of those conspiracy theories. He likes those conspiracy theories.
But it's not a conspiracy theory.
Right.
That's the other thing. It's not actually a conspiracy theory. It is a real thing.
Right.
So Vance knows it's a real thing. They all know this is a real thing. And Vance is thinking about 2028. I mean, everybody has their own agenda in that room, right? And I think Vance is really interesting to me because he's the one who's saying, let's be transparent. Let's release all of it. Let's just do it. Let's just do a deluge of information. People are going to be so overwhelmed, but get it out there. But it's bad. I mean, they have to meet in the Situation Room to talk about one of the allegations against Donald Trump. And it is about a victim of Jeffrey Epstein in a 302, which is sworn testimony. As you know, this is when you go to the FBI and you tell your story. It's a sworn testimony. She says that she was, I guess, assaulted by Donald Trump, and he bruised her nipples. He was flicking them, and it was damaging to her. And there was another woman that they interviewed, Sarah Ransome, who said that she saw the nipples afterward in a bathroom and could speak to the fact that they looked, bruised or in some way harmed. And they're talking about this in the Situation Room. They're trying to figure out how to deal with this crisis. And, JD Vance, from his perspective, is like, let's just get it out there. There's been worse said about Donald Trump, but really what he's thinking is, I don't want to be aligned with an administration that is not transparent about this, because I'm going to run for president in 2028. And it's the MAGA dudes who are in their 24-year-olds. I think it was the exact age bracket that he brought up, that he doesn't want to lose. And they were the ones who were falling off, and they were the ones who were
Yeah,
angry.
the podcast bros,
We spent a lot of time on this show talking about power and influence. That's why I use ground news. Right now, outlets are covering Alabama's redistricting fight very differently. The Federalist frames it as Republicans winning with the headline, SCOTUS greenlights Alabama's congressional map. Whereas Mother Jones frames it as another example of egregious gerrymandering with the headline, in Alabama, the Roberts Court hands Republicans yet another shocking gerrymandering win. Same story, completely different headlines. Ground news lets you compare coverage from around the world. You get to read stories side by side. In this case, there are 27 different sources they pulled. And then they offer you media bias and factuality ratings. And they help you understand who's behind the outlets you're reading. Are they corporate owned? Is it a shadowy billionaire? Or is it truly independent? It's been one of the best tools I've found for getting outside of the media bubble. So check out Ground News at groundnews.com/Tara to get 40% off the unlimited access Vantage plan and unlock worldwide perspectives on today's biggest news stories. That's the plan that I'm using. You can only get 40% off the unlimited access Vantage plan by using my link. So go to groundnews.com/Tara. That's groundnews.com/Tara.
Somebody is cooperating with Maggie Haberman with probably audio tape recordings because she's so confident in the quotes. And
Well, here's the thing. The one thing I've learned about covering Trump and the people around him is that they know that it is a viper's nest, right? And they will all want to write history. And this isn't just in Trump's administration. This is in any political organization, any administration, Democrats too. They're fully aware that books will be written about the time in which they work. They want to set the record in which that paints them in a light where they're not the antagonists, you could say. Like their perspective is painted the way that they, believe it happened. So they take notes, they write journals, they try to have documents that they can use to back up and defend themselves if they are, destroyed in the process. Like they're constantly managing. A lot of these staffers, they're managing their own, and especially cabinet official level. Like they're managing their images the entire time. They want to be seen as great American heroes. And that's what you see happening. I mean, they said that there were many accounts that they couldn't corroborate, so they didn't use them. But yes, in the case where they're quoting people, you have to think that they either had someone literally transcribing in real time, or so many people remember that exact line that they could use it, or maybe they were recording. Which I think is illegal, frankly, right? Are you allowed to record without consent?
Well, it depends. If you're if they're in DC, I think you probably need two parties to consent. But if you're on the phone and you're sitting in, I don't know the law in Virginia. I don't know where Patel was sitting. I don't know where Bondi was sitting. So depending if she's in Florida, it's a one-party consent rule. It really depends on it.
Or if the person who said it says, "Yeah, I said that," or tells Maggie, "I said that. This is what I said at the time," and then other people can confirm it. That's another way you get a quote. But I do wonder, because I wonder what the law is too with the SCIF. Once you consent to being a part of a SCIF, does that also mean that you have consented even if you're not physically there, but if you're on the phone, that you're not recording?
Well, listen, I'm sure that Kash Patel, if he's not the source of it, or if he is going to be, somebody's conducting an investigation as to how this leak got out. Because, like I said, the detail in the reporting is just too molecular. And so,
or maybe he doesn't want to conduct that investigation.
Right, that's what I mean. Right.
He, in fact, knows that he's a part of it. I mean, that's the thing. The ones who are always screaming, "Leakers, leakers, leakers," are often the biggest leakers, is what I found in my life.
That's right.
That was another episode of the Tara Palmeri Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, you can support my independent journalism by hitting subscribe, sharing, telling all your friends about this. Leave a comment, That's great to keep the algorithm going. But go to tarapalmeri.com and sign up for the Red Letter. That's my newsletter. You get my exclusive reporting straight to your inbox. I do the real journalism, not easy stuff. And I give you all the insights from being a reporter for 17 years. I was a White House correspondent inside of those rooms. I know a lot about this. I want to thank my producer, Dan Schiffmacher. I want to thank Abby Baker, who's also producing. I want to thank Adam Stewart, who does my graphics, and Dan Rosen, my manager. See you again soon.